Hey everybody, and welcome to I'm Apostolic Not Confused. And today I have my mama here with me, and we are going to be doing a little bit of a testimony and Q&A. So let's get started. I'm Apostolic, Not Confused. Real talk for apostolic teens with Jayla Dixon. Okay, so the first question that we're going to start with is, can you tell us a little bit about who you were before you came to God?
Yes. So I grew up in a single home. My mom was a single mother. My dad and my mom divorced when I was young. And so I would only see my dad every once in a while. But when I was younger, my mom would have her own private room away from me. And I was curious a couple of times to see what was up there. So I went up there and I saw trays of marijuana. My mom used to clean her marijuana. I don't know what it was, but I just remember her messing with it. And that's the first time I seen it that I can remember. I actually found out that when I got older, that when I was younger, I actually found it and I ingested some of it when I was a very, very young child. I don't remember that. So then going forward, a few years later, my dad started coming around when I was about 7 or 8 years old. And his way of bonding with me, I guess, because they all smoked weed, was smoking weed with his child. I guess that's what he thought was what you should do. So he did it for years, so probably about 2 or 3 years. My mom never knew, mind you. He would come pick me up. He'd go drive. We'd go tripping, as he would call it, and he would smoke weed with me. Okay. And then I was about 8 years old when I had my first drink of alcohol. My parents, well, my mom, I should say, had a party, and it was my stepdad at the time. They would have a party, and my mom told me it was okay to take a drink of it. So I took a drink of it, and it was sweet to me. So I was like, oh, okay, whatever. But that's all I ever, did when I was little. And then maybe when I was about 10 or 11 years old, my dad stopped coming around like that and smoking weed with me. But his parents were very adamant in my life. They were pick me up every summer. I got to go and see things that a person of a single mom that didn't have much money wouldn't ever be able to do. So I got to like travel all over the United States and stuff like that. And they were a pretty good role model. I went to my first AA meeting with my grandfather when I was about 9 years old. And my grandfather would take me because he was an alcoholic. I do remember many times my grandfather and grandmother arguing because he was drunk. There was a time that some kid was trying to help him out of the car, and he got mad and fell and cracked his head open. And right after that, I told them that I wasn't going to come back no more. I said, I don't want to be around this. And he got sober the next summer. And that's when he started taking me to AA meetings. And I used to go with him. We'd set up the little coffee, his little coffee things that they'd have or whatever. And I just remember going there and listening to the testimonies. Okay. So then I'll fast forward to my teenage years. So all through high school, I never smoked weed. I never drank. I never did any of that. I was so focused on school, and I figured I already tried that. What do I want to try it for? Well, I figured God saved me. Okay. And I didn't think about this until I came to God. But I figured God saved me because I never drank. I never smoked weed. I never went to parties because it wasn't my cup of tea. I experienced it as a young child. And so I found out later on after high school that the parties were off the hook and crazy. Okay. So I'm really glad I didn't go. Okay. So I never went. So I was grateful to that. A lot of people had said that the reason why they didn't invite me is because I was with my mom a lot. Well, it was just me and my mom.
Yeah.
I didn't have anyone else, you know. So she was my friend and she was my mom. So at the age of 15, my mom found God and she took us to a church. And I'll never forget this church because of all the people. There's a ton of people there, and I was very shy. But then she would allow me to go to my friend's house from the church or whatever, and I was completely turned off. I will tell you, I didn't like it. I was like, okay, no, because I feel in my mind, if church people are supposed to be church, why are they drinking and doing stuff like that? So I decided I didn't want to go over there to these people's houses anymore. I didn't tell my mom. Then my mom let me spend the night at her friend's house, and her friend gave me a beer, and I tried it, and I thought it was nasty. I was like,
A
oh,
lot of people do.
it was nasty. So, but you know, it's okay. I experienced it and I moved on. So then years go on. I had my first son as a teenager. And I did smoke weed a little bit. I didn't drink. I just dabbled a little bit. Then years later again, I had another son. Um, didn't really do anything. I had it. I experienced it. I was good. And then years later, I had another son. Okay, my number 3. Okay. Well, I thought, how am I going to lose this weight? So I never drank really. I mean, yes, I partied with my friends or whatever. I really wasn't a drinker. I was 21. Um, but I really was like, how can I say, I wasn't pleased with my body because I had 3 kids. I felt I was fat, even though I really wasn't. Now I look at pictures back then, you know. So I started doing drugs. At that time, my excuse was I wanted to lose weight. So then one thing led to another. I ended up doing drugs for quite some time. I unfortunately chose drugs over my children. I gave my children, I had 5 kids by this time, 2 for which I did drugs um, very heavily with the last 2. And I gave them my children to my mom, and I asked my mom to take them. Um, and then she didn't have them very long, but she had them a lot during my drug use. I took them over there a lot, you know, because I really didn't want them seeing what I was doing, even though I found out years later they knew what I was doing. So then, but I gave my kids my mom. And then one day, I don't know what it was, but I just was so tired. There's a saying, I was sick and tired of being sick and tired. So I was going through a phone book. For many of you that don't know what that is, it's a book that used to have all kinds of things in there. Now there's the internet. But I went through the phone book. I called rehabs. Everybody wanted this or that I couldn't do. So for about 2 months, I did that. I tried. I probably could have tried a little harder, but I tried. So then one day my friend came over. She knew where I was, and my friend got clean and sober 6 months before me. Okay. And she had actually had mentioned that to me when she was screaming at me that my mother had a heart attack. And I was like, what? And I was like, what am I going to do? And so I just said, okay, this has to be a reason. So then I went to go live with my kids. So no rehab, no nothing. I couldn't find a rehab. I just focused on my children. But I found an NA meeting. So what I did was I took my children, all 5 of my kids, pushed them in the cart, walked them, and we went to the NA meeting together. And I asked them, you know, I told them I needed them to be with me. So we did NA meetings, and then I just proceeded to work on my recovery. I was still missing something. Didn't know what it was. All my life I feel like I've been searching for something. So then I got some time under my belt, and I got some recovery. Um, what do you call system where people would help me? Okay,
Yeah.
do you need to go to meetings? Do you need a support system?
Yeah.
That's what I was looking for. Sorry. And then I got a job that helped keep my mind busy. And then I was just focused on my kids and raising my kids.
And that leads us to our second question of what was your first memory of someone trying to invite you to church or talk to you about God?
Well, my daughter-in-law would invite me to church, and I was that type of person that would come to church on Christmas, Easter, just a holiday. But I came, and each time I know God was in my ear, calling me. So I still was living the life. I started smoking weed again. I tried to hide it from my adult child, and which is your dad. But I know he knew something was off. But he never gave up on me, and neither did Alicia. She never gave up on me. She kept inviting me and inviting me. And a little bit, I kept coming more and more and more.
So the third question is, what was your main reason for not wanting to come to church at first?
Well, I feel like I was comfortable in the situation, living the world. That's all I knew. I didn't know anything. I didn't have God in my life. I really honestly didn't know how good it would be. If I would have known how good God is a long time ago, I wished I would have jumped in when I was 15.
Mm-hmm.
I really do. But I I I didn't.
Question number 4, was there a moment when you felt God tugging on your heart but you still resisted?
Yes. So I was at the Vertical Church, and I started coming a little more, and something about that church and the Pastor Pizarro, and my son, just the words, the preaching, it just pricked my heart. And then they started the Saved and Sober program. I was like, all right. Because I was still coming to church a lot more than I was. I wanted it. I just didn't know how to get it. But that is when I really started like, okay, I think I like this God thing.
The 5th question, what finally shifted in you and what was the breaking point?
I kept saying, okay, you know what? I'm going to give my life over to God 100%. I'm going to do it. I'm going to do it. But my grandson, Jonathan, he noticed that his mom, smoked weed, and he's so smart. And he would always say, Mama, you don't do that, do you? But I knew I did. And I think God was just using him to just push me over the edge to say, come on over. And I think that was my breaking point. I said, you can do it. If I can stop doing drugs cold turkey, I can stop smoking marijuana. I'm not gonna lie, it was really hard for me. It really, really, really was. But I wanted to be a good role model for my grandchildren.
Another question is, how did your family stay patient or persistent during your time in the world?
Well, I will say that DJ and Alicia never gave up on me. Alicia was adamant. She would always text me. She knew the ploy, your son's preaching, would get me there. She every time, she never gave up. She always invited me. She worked on me no matter what, even though I knew she probably knew I was still living in the world. I was still wearing makeup. I was wearing not modest clothes, just living for the world instead of for God. But she never gave up on me. She was adamant and very persistent, even though she knew I was still living for the world, and I love her for that.
How did it feel when you finally gave up the things of the world?
Like I found what I've been looking for my whole life. My whole life, I knew I was missing something. I was looking for something in relationships, in drugs, marijuana, drugs, alcohol. I used to try to fix everybody. It was my crutch, I would assume, but it felt so relieving to feel that I had found what I have been looking for my whole life. It was like a brick just went off of my shoulders.
And if they hadn't invited you or lived that example, where do you think you would be now?
I really don't know, because I was spiraling backwards. I got clean and sober. For 10 years, I didn't drink or smoke marijuana or anything. Then I started smoking marijuana again. I started drinking just a little bit here and there. And then, honestly, if Alicia did not be persistent with me, who knows? I might do drugs again, and I could be dead.
How has your life changed since you gave your heart to God?
Oh, it's been amazing. I get to see my grandkids flourish in God. I get to live a life free of all the chains that were holding me back. I get to witness my grandson giving me that call that he got the Holy Ghost at Camp West. None of that would have been possible. I get to witness my grandchildren praying for people, witnessing to children and even adults. It is just completely amazing. I am so blessed.
And what would you say to someone who's listening that was in the same place you were and running and resisting and are completely unsure?
Don't resist. God is there for you. Do not give up. I would say if you hear that little call, because I heard him. I know I heard him. I know he was calling me. I just was rebellious to just find a church, find someone. Don't give up. God loves you.
Thank you so much for being on my podcast today. I really appreciate it. And I can't wait to see you guys for the next one. Bye.